Hi gang, we were going to do 4 segments on the Joy of Football this week, but as you'll discover, we witter on for so long that we decided to cut it after 3. The first one, where we witter on a lot, is we need to talk about, because we really needed to talk about Nottingham Forest, Liverpool and Bournemouth.
One of the 3 segments of the best is 3 of the best, in which we concentrate on this side of the English Channel, South Coast teams, and across the water as well, where we've got some players that have caught our eye.
And letter from the Gantry is Martin celebrating VAR decisions by referees, not necessarily by VAR officials. And then we ran out of steam.
No, we didn't. We just ran out of time, because if it had been the Voice of Passion, which was on our list, we'd still be going now, and that we finished like an hour ago.
Okay, so don't forget, you can subscribe in order to get all the news. You can go on the Patreon to get more closely involved, and you can go on substack.com, where we're the Joy of Football, to actually read what we've written as well. The Joy of Football, we're coming to you.
The Joy of Football is everything, and you love it, we love it. Thanks for being part of our little journey here.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks like Xavi! Ready! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello, the Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. And today, Martin, I know you're going to be insufferable later on over the results that you enjoyed at the weekend.
No, I think we should point out straight away that we have 4 clubs represented in this podcast, 2 that people know about because it's you and me. And we have 2 Man United producers and 1 Arsenal one. And extraordinarily, and I know about statistics in football, we have all had away wins over the course of the last weekend.
I think you and I were the same score, weren't we?
No. The same 3 points.
That's how I follow. That's how closely I follow you.
Yeah.
Woking FC. Right. Let's start with we need to talk about. And 3 clubs we need to talk about. And we're going to start with Nottingham Forest. Sacked their manager after 8 games. Second manager of the season. Depending on who you believe, 18 or 21 minutes after the final whistle. When they lost at the game I was at, 3-0 to Chelsea.
Where were you when it was going on? Were you still in the ground?
No, at the end. No, I left about 5 minutes after the end, and it was a 12:30 kickoff, so it was 2:30. I strode back.
Would you? I mean, you obviously picked it up on the car radio going home.
Yeah.
Would you say, from what you saw, that you were surprised? I mean, with your cynicism, you're probably not surprised at all.
Well,
right?
with my cynicism, I thought it absolutely horrendous that someone in the club seemed to have told Talk Sport that if he lost, he was out, because it was them who I think led with it, and well done them for getting the story. But what are Forest doing, leaking stuff like that? I mean, especially before a game. How does that affect the dressing room? How does that affect the manager? What a load of amateurs. What a load of charlatans. And there are 2 ways of looking at changing a manager so early in the season. Brighton did it.
By the way, this is the second time they've changed their manager this season.
But Brighton did it. And they did it with Chris Hughton because they just felt they wanted to stop parking the bus and fighting for survival and be a little bit more expansive, and they brought in Graham Potter
but that was at the end of a season.
No, it wasn't. It was during the season, and it worked. It worked. But here, so what I'm saying is, when they got rid of Nuno Espirito Santo, they could have argued, we want a little bit more expansive football. We've gotten to Europe and we want a little bit more. But they didn't argue that. It was simply, Edu has come in, Santo fell out with Marianakis,
yeah.
and we assume that he didn't get on with Edu, and the whole club just seems to have gone into decline.
I think you can't say that. There's been obviously the man who pays the bills, he is entitled to do what he wants. It's his club. The club is in a position that it's in because of his money. Now, obviously, most of us disagree with the way he's going about his business, but it is his business, and you have to respect that. We've all had bosses in our time. We're probably lucky now. We don't have any bosses except each other, really, in our worlds. But
I've never accepted any because I've always worked for myself.
So. Yeah, well,
that's been my problem.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm
going to stick up for his right to do that. It looked to me as though he decided to make this change because of whatever the relationship with Nuno had broken down, and that Nuno helped in a way his own downfall by talking about it, which was perhaps something that didn't need to go into the public domain. Anyway, that change was made, and with it, we're all talking from outside of this. With it, seemingly, was a total change of philosophy.
Which, as I say, is not necessarily negative, but it didn't work. But it wasn't given time.
No, but I think the way it was probably put out there to the players was, look, you did great last season, but that's gone. We're not going to play like that anymore. We're going to play this way. And it will be very, very different to the way you played. So it affected quite a lot of the players.
It would have been with Potter and Houghton. That's my argument. So I don't think that in itself was enough to say the place is a shambles. It depends
how it was presented to the players.
Yeah.
You know, I think that may be something we should look at a bit more forensically. And we're not in, you hear a lot of gossip in my time going around football grounds. And I'm very keen not to put gossip onto this podcast because so we don't know. But the suggestion is that it perhaps wasn't presented in the way that, obviously it's going to affect adversely some players who played a lot of games for Nottingham Forest and got them to the point where they were on the verge of getting into the Champions League. And I think that's also something that went against Nuno. They did really well to qualify for Europe, and they got lucky with a step up because of the Crystal Palace situation. So they're in a good competition, which Postecoglou had won. It was the defending coach, if you like. So that looked a good fit. But maybe the way it was,
presented.
The presentation of it perhaps wasn't the way to get the best, not out on the field. I was watching the game, Neil. You were at the game. In the first half, if Forest had come in 3-0 up, no one would have been surprised.
I agree with you. Although they didn't create any of those chances, they were all gifted to them. But
their chances.
Yeah, but I agree with that. But really, the level of football was barely Premier League quality. So in fact, it wasn't, because they were gifted the chances, they had them, and they missed them. So it was not Premier League quality.
No, but that you.
But
knowing what happened afterwards. But I was watching it live on television, so it was at the time, and in a way feeling for Ange, because one of those goes in. Maybe only one needed to go in to set the tone for the rest of the game, and he would still be in the job now.
But what I want to bring to the discussion is this. They, of course, got themselves a new director of football, not just Forest, but the whole Marianakis regime, because it's Olympiacos as well. They got themselves a new director of football in Edu. And this summer, they signed Amari Hutchinson from Ipswich for a club record £37.5 million, not in the squad at the weekend. Dylan Bakwa from Strasbourg, £35 million, not in the squad at the weekend. Dan and Doué from Bologna for £34 million, only on the bench. James McAtee from Manchester City for £30 million, not in the squad. Arnaud Kalimuendo from Rennes, £26 million, not in the squad. Nicolo Savona from Juventus for £11.2 million on the bench. Jair Cunha from Botafogo for £10.2 million on the bench. Igor Jesus, who I think had been away on international duty, to be fair.
Igor Jesus, he managed to hit the bar and the post in one shot. Yeah.
Botafogo, but as a substitute on the bench, and so on. So what
all of those, I think, have had some minutes under Postecoglou. Not many minutes, but I think pretty much all of them did.
So the only ones...
The goalkeeper played at Swansea, didn't he? John Victor, he played in
the Carabao Cup.
So
the only ones who started weren't signings, weren't purchases. They were loans. Who was Alexander Zinchenko from Arsenal, Douglas Luiz from Juventus, who, by the way, Douglas Luiz played really well. He was their best player for me.
He was injured playing in the Champions League game, the first Champions League, they wish, in the Europa League game, and didn't play against Sunderland. I did the next game. I was there commentating. So I have seen them in the flesh. That was a very close game. They didn't score, and they didn't defend on one particular set piece. They lost the game to a team that's above them in the league, and that's probably one of the things that's frustrating the Forest fans at the moment. I think what's done is done, Neil, and whether you point the finger at Edu or Marinakis or Ange, football is about the here and now, and the here and now is, as we're speaking, we don't know, but Sean Dyche seems to be the manager who's going to get the job, who knows the Nottingham area so well. They're talking, if Sean goes, Ian Wone will go, Steve Stone will go, legends, Forest players, legendary Forest players. So the one thing that they will get, which is an element of management that crops up from time to time, is knowing the club. You get a bit of a leg up in an interview if you're maybe a past player or know the area or who've got a coaching staff. So I do think, at the moment, they would need the Sean Dyche approach to get them up the table. So if he does get it, and personally I hope he does, because he's to get another English manager in, we're very, very short of them in the Premier League. So what's done is done. This is something that could make a documentary in 5 years' time when all the stuff comes out as to why this happened. When did Marinakis meet Ange during the summer because they have this Greek background together? Was all sorts of things that could have, but we don't know for sure. And I don't want to come on this podcast and say, oh, well, that's on the grapevine, this, that, and the other, until somebody looks us in the eye and said, "This is I was part of this, and this is what happened," and maybe that will happen in the near future. We both bump into a lot of football people. Maybe we'll get a bit more that we can broadcast.
One of the themes of this season, in particular, after the summer that we had, is how much business has been going on in the transfer market that doesn't always seem to be good business in the football market. And too many transfers, all these players. I mean, I would not like to be in a dressing room in which so many new, for the club, expensive players are not part of the squad, because I have experience of how that destroys dressing room atmosphere.
In the Sunderland game that I did, Andoni started and took the fight to Sunderland. He was the best Forest player in the first half an hour. Later in the game, they were a goal down after halfway through, maybe about coming up 25, 30 minutes. Amari Hutchinson came on towards the end and was the best player in the last few minutes of the game and came very close to getting an equaliser, which might have made some difference. I saw the Botafogo players all play in the Club World Cup, and that smacks of multi-club ownership, and it may not be directly multi-club ownership, but a connection between a director who's doing some international business for the Brazilian club, who is an American, and the Forest being receptive to this kind of deal. It comes with that kind of structure, I think, and it's not what we're used to. Callum Wendo has been on the sub a few times. He looks a lively forward. Again, you're coming into a team that's not doing well, and if you don't do the business, you end up losing your manager because he's the one who's going to pay the price. None of those players are going to be totally put out. They'll be disappointed. And a good friend of our podcast, Ryan Yates, spoke. He, as the club captain, went up and had to deal with it all. And he said, collectively, we must all bear the responsibility. So you can put Edu into that, you can put the owner into that, you can put Ange into that, you can put his coaches into that, and you can put the players into that as well.
Definitely.
So it's been a mess, but these things happen in football. If if you wanted an expression to sum up what I thought was cutting his losses, that's what Marinakis was doing when he made the decision, and he did it in a very brutal I think a non-football-y sort of way. But as I said right at the beginning, he's the one who pays the piper, and he can call the tune. And the tune he called was not very harmonious not a nice harmony for Ange, was it?
Well, the things that I can't get my head around are how little time the new manager was given. I can't get my head around how so many players were signed and 2 different managers didn't use so many of them.
What about, I mean, listen, it was Brian Clough. How many days did he get? He was the greatest manager in the country when Leeds approached him, and it didn't work out. Now, there may be some similarities, and how ironic it is we're talking about somebody who became a legendary Nottingham Forest manager.
But the other thing that I have trouble getting my head around as well is that a lot of the business didn't feel like football business. So it's 3 things that I struggle with, and I just.
Well, if you look at
I wouldn't like to be a Nottingham Forest supporter. And I just want to say one other thing. Someone who came in for a lot of criticism at the end of last season for what he said, your mate, Gary Neville, looks as though he was dead right.
Well, he always is, isn't he? That's what he always tells me.
So I think Forest are in trouble, and I think Sean Dyche is the right person to try and lead them out of it in many ways. But that's just another Sean Dyche job. Let's get him in. We're in trouble. He's like the new Sam Allardyce, isn't he? Similar kind of player as well when he was a player.
Yeah, burly, defensive-minded players. Yeah. But if you look at it, I mean, Hutchinson had a good season. You know him from Chelsea. He had a good season at Ipswich. And Bologna had a good season. Dan Andoni was one of their better players. James McAtee was bursting from the bench to play more for Manchester City. He scored a hat-trick in a game.
He had a very good... Hutchinson and McAtee had very good under 21
very
Euros.
Good. So it's an investment. And sometimes for the non-super rich clubs and the clubs that are definitely vulnerable, as Forest have been, to the profit and sustainability tariff, if you like, the disincentive of working the transfer market is, that's how they find themselves in. They are not the Nottingham Forest that were European champions in the Brian Clough era. They're not the Forest that, football has changed so much since then. I think they've done very well to get where we find them now, which is in the Premier League, in Europe, and with a crisis that they've created maybe from within, but there's still lots and lots of time to make this a successful season.
Yeah, but I also think that I don't understand why they went from 4 at the back to 3 at the back when they had such a good-looking defence last season. I think they had the equal most clean sheets in the Premier League with.
They were a side based on defending who counter-attacked very well, which is very similar to what Brian Clough did way back when, and they were to be transported in a short period of time to a different way of playing, and it goes back to your argument, which I generally support, is that it's not about philosophies; it's about getting the best out of the players you've got, and if. I'm sure Ange will reemerge somewhere else and get back on the bike, so to speak.
And win a trophy in his second year. Yes, Ange.
Well, listen, you look at the facts. He has. And
we have to, because he never stops telling us.
I know in my non-league days how hard it is to win a trophy. So, don't knock him for that.
No. Okay, that's Forest. We need to talk about Liverpool. 4 consecutive defeats. It's been a long time since that has happened to them.
And the first of that was the last one at home, the first home one. The other 3 were away.
Yeah. I think they started the season only winning in stoppage time. They then only lost in stoppage time, and it was even a late goal here, of course. But it's.
I'll just put one thing to you, Neil, because football is about moments, and I hear the cry "head injury" all the time at football, because it's something that's in the game for the right reason, but it sometimes is exploited for the wrong reason. And the onus is on the referee to stop the play. Now, it was a strange one in terms of how McAllister got injured. This determined for me.
This is Liverpool, Manchester United.
Yeah, this determined how the game panned out. Of course, if the goal hadn't been scored, if he stopped and restarted the game and it went on at 0-0, Manchester United may still have won. We can't possibly say they played very well. So,
and ironically, I didn't realise till I saw it on the highlights that it was his own man who had done it.
Yeah, but it was. There is a suspicion that head injuries are being used now as an excuse to get the game stopped whenever, and the players are going down holding their head when they've been hit somewhere else. But this was a genuine head injury. So had the game been stopped and in sort of midway between the incident and the ball getting to Brian Mbeumo, it would have caused a rumpus, but it would actually have been adhering to the policy that I think the medical side of football wants to see enforced regularly. And what you don't want is the head injury, and you find that Alex McAllister gets up and there's not a mark on him. Sometimes the blood has to help. It's a strange thing to say, but I've been looking at it a few times. That Michael Oliver sort of looks, but it was a strange way to get injured. So I don't really blame Michael Oliver. Had he stopped the game, I wouldn't have blamed him. And he didn't stop the game, I wouldn't blame him. But it went Manchester United's way. And clearly, I think it distracted Virgil van Dijk, who certainly didn't have his best game. And that happened in the second minute of it. So I just think that was... Manchester United, to their credit, took full advantage of it. It wasn't the best piece of goalkeeping either, but the ball's in the back of the Liverpool net at the Kop end as well, and there's the atmosphere's flattened, and a team that's short on big results, I'm not saying short on confidence, but short on big results, suddenly had a leg up going for what would be, I'm sure, regarded as the best result for Ruben Amorim.
I mean, my reaction to it, having seen their previous game when they lost at Chelsea, is that they went a goal down at Chelsea, forced their way back into the game, had a spell on top, scored to make it 1-1, and then kind of fell away and lost. And it was the same story against Manchester United. They fought hard to get back into the game. They were second best for quite a long time, but they got on top, they equalised, and then they kind of fell away a bit. And I wonder about the psychology of that. But I do remember when we were previewing the season saying very strongly, no one can predict how the Diogo Jota death will affect the dressing room and the club.
Were on the 20th minute.
Oh, it was so emotional still.
Tears in the eye stuff watching, I have to say.
And we cannot imagine what's going on in the dressing room. We just can't.
And you're very right to point that out, Neil. All I can say is when I was watching it, and nothing lasts forever, the great three forwards, only Salah is still there, Firmino and Mane have gone. But I watching it, I thought, they need Trent Alexander-Arnold. They need somebody to find a pass to open up, and they need probably a more confident left back there in Andy Robertson and Milos Kerkez, who's obviously one for the future, but may not be quite the one for the present. He's
struggling, isn't he?
Yeah, he is struggling, and we're both full of admiration for him in his time at Bournemouth. Yeah. So I can see why he was signed. It's not like where we were.
But in the old Liverpool days, they'd have signed one or two players in the summer. They'd have gone into the reserves when it was a men's league, and they'd have been eased into the first team during the course of the season. It
just shows, going back to what you said about Nottingham Forest, I mean, Wirtz has not lived up to his billing, and I'm sure he will, but hasn't yet. Isak hasn't, and Ekitike looks as though he has, but he's not. Obviously, his name wasn't on the first 11 for the team sheet for the biggest game that's been played while he's been there.
Frimpong hasn't lived up to it.
No, so you can't say, Edu did this without looking at Richard Hughes, who I used to know very well because he was a player I came across quite a lot when he was playing for Portsmouth and Bournemouth, and
he's the director of football.
He's the director of football, yeah, and they, I'm sure they will come good, and maybe they'll come good for Forest as well. But this is as it is, and everybody judges the moment. You've just dealt with a phone call before we started the podcast about whether Chelsea can win the league. I mean, it's a genuine question, but why ask it now in the middle of October?
The other thing is, you and I raved about the goalkeeper in the Euros.
You did.
Did you not?
Well, I thought he was okay, but I didn't think Liverpool were going to sign him. I raved about Georgia. I thought they were very good.
I thought he had I was really skeptical about his form in La Liga. I'm skeptical about a lot of goalkeepers' forms in La Liga.
I'll give you that. You certainly were.
But I was reluctantly impressed with him in the Euros. But he's come in. He's not a Premier League goalkeeper. I think that Premier League goalkeepers need a different skill set to goalkeepers in other leagues. It's not better, it's not worse, but it's different. And at the moment, he doesn't have it.
Well, no, he wasn't the man of the match, shall we say that? But without Alisson, I'm going back to the two fullbacks, one of whom is still there, and one of whom chose to go, and maybe Liverpool.
Kanate's not having a good season.
No, but when teams are losing, you can point to everybody who's not having a good season, and it's funny enough. I've got Liverpool's next game, which is shortly after we finish this podcast in the Champions League, and then I've got Manchester United's next game against Brighton. So maybe next week we'll have something more sort of from within to talk about, but. It's a shock, but you remember a few years ago, Liverpool lost 6 or 7 home games in a row, which
that was during COVID.
During COVID, which is absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable that happened. Yeah. But now that's given even though it is very early in the season, it's given an extra leg up for those teams that are trying to take the title from.
I mean, I do think they're full of good. The club is full of good players, and I do think it's just a case of sorting it out and wading through it. And I do think the Jota thing must hang over everything.
It must do, and it's still,
I just want to say one other thing about this, which is not Liverpool but Manchester United. I remember going to a game at Chelsea. It must have been 15 at least years ago, 16 years ago, at home to a rather poor Hull City. And they played 3 at the back, and they had this lumpen centre-back who stood out with the quality of his defending. He was a teenager, I think, and the extraordinary quality of his playing, his passing, and the playing out from the back.
He wasn't a teenager, but you're talking about Harry Maguire.
Yeah, we were all saying, who's this? He's a really good player.
Yeah, I covered that game, actually, and he was very, very impressive. But we're not really talking about Manchester United because we don't need to talk about them, but I want to say one thing to you, and we've mentioned Nottingham Forest. It was at Nottingham Forest in 1990 where Alex Ferguson got a win against all the odds. Now, and he was close to the same, but he'd been there since the mid. So now Amorim has had this result. Is that his Fergie Forest moment? Because the way they played and the way when it went to 1-1 and the way they came again to win the game, that showed a real together. Matthias de Ligt said last week in an interview, didn't he? We're better. We are better. We need better results. And that wasn't just a better result. That was an outstanding result.
Yeah, it's just with Maguire, he's played a lot of 4 at the back. But if you think of England in the 2018 World Cup, was it that one where he played well? It was 3 at the back. Yeah. And he's really not got the skill set to play 4 at the back, I don't think. He's just not mobile enough. But 3 at the back, he's still not a bad player at all, and he showed that.
Which podcast were you saying the Brentford goal was when he stepped up and, how long ago was that? 2 weeks ago? Listen, he's a fine footballer with a wonderful career. He's made the most of what he's got, absolutely the most, and he's a top bloke. But he has good days and bad days. Yesterday, we're talking the day after the game against Liverpool and Man United.
Credit where credit's due.
And he played great, and he's got that strength of character to to ride roughshod over the critics. So it was Harry's game, as it turned out, in the end.
And finally, we need to talk about Bournemouth.
For somewhat different reasons.
Who are the tiny team who are striding up there in the Champions League qualifying places, fourth as we talk. Now, what's interesting to me is that the players they signed this. I mean, we've talked about how they lost 3 of the back 4. They changed their goalkeeper as well in the summer, and they signed Diakite, right back from Lille. He played for £34.5 million. Petrovic, the goalkeeper, £25 million. He played. Jimenez on loan from Milan. He played. And then on the bench, Adley from Bayer Leverkusen, Doak from Liverpool.
Truefair played as well, didn't he?
Truefair.
He's the left back, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Bournemouth...
From Rennes.
Bournemouth have
great
done...
production from France, Truefair.
Bournemouth have done their business. They're in the team, and they're absolutely thriving.
Well played. I mean, the teams that are high up the table, their new signings will have done well, although we've questioned 1 or 2 of Liverpool, obviously. And Arsenal are going through a period where, is Gyökeres this or is he that? So they're getting questioned. But the truth is, if you're in a winning team, you've got a heck of a lot better chance of showing how good you are and playing relaxed football. And Bournemouth play, well, it's relaxed in the sense that they know what they're doing, but the pace they play at, the fitness levels are frightening, really. And it's extraordinary when you think how close they were to going out of the league and their very, very humble history compared to what they're doing now. And it's just another pat on the back for the pyramid. I know it's not helped at the moment by financial fair play and profit and sustainability. You can't really buy your way to the top, which has happened. I mean, Blackburn won the Premier League, not in Premier League years with Jack Walker's money. And that's been stopped really by otherwise. I think we'd have Gary Neville telling us how good it is to play in the Premier League because they've got the money at Salford, the kind of money that you need to make those strides up. And they've been stuck, really, because of the restrictions put on them. It's brilliant to go through all the non-league system, and now they might get out of League 2 this season. But I just think it's amazing. I go back to my Southern Television days when Bournemouth were struggling in the 3rd division and couldn't win a game. And the club was just a nice place to visit because the Bournemouth's a nice place to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 2 facets to Bournemouth's success. Obviously, the recruitment is one, but I look at the way managers work, and I look at Thomas Frank at Brentford, who worked miracles. He was an absolute genius for Brentford, but it was essentially counter-attacking football. It was get your defence sorted.
What have you got against counter-attacking
I've got nothing
football?
against it. Just hang on. I've got nothing against it. I look at Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace, and it's the same thing. It's essentially get your defence sorted, and it's counter-attacking football. I look at Iraola at Bournemouth, and it's essentially possession football. And he actually plays in a way that the other smaller clubs don't play. He plays in a way that the big clubs play, and he's taking them on at their own game. And he is the only one, in essence, who's doing that. And when we keep linking Glasner with the big jobs, and obviously Frank got a big job, if you call Tottenham a big job, and even I do.
That's quite an admission, by the way.
I think that Iraola is the one. Iraola is the one, if I were a big club, that I would be looking at because of the nature of his football.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen them in the flesh this season, but I've seen them, a lot of them on television. to me, they pass the ball much quicker. If it's not counter-attacking, it's quick passing. It's not possession-based in the sense that they are good at keeping the ball, but they pass it forward. And that, to me, is what I love about football. I mean, it's backwards, square and sideways drives me mad and drives the fans mad, I believe, although it has a part in the game because it wears out the opposition. And if you have the very best players, you can do that knowing that you're going to pounce on the moments that you need to win games. But that can't apply to a team like Bournemouth. So they're quick, they're dynamic, they've got players that get you off your seat. And we've given Semenyo. We put our hands up to say we got Semenyo before many other people did, didn't we? Particularly a game that we shared when we went down to see Chelsea play Bournemouth. You went down to see Chelsea play Bournemouth. I went to see Bournemouth v Chelsea. It's a subtle difference. So full of admiration. The one thing that again they've got an owner that is working for that football club. And for Nottingham Forest, that's not at the moment working for the football club, but the football club, I stress again, wouldn't be where it is but for Marinakis. And by the way, just what we didn't talk about with Liverpool is that the Fenway Sports Group came out and I thought made a fantastic statement. American owners aren't to everybody's taste, but they came out and said how thrilled they were to be part of a great football club. And they'd come to be part of it, not to change it, I didn't say that, but that was the implication of it. And I thought John Henry and his fellow directors should get a heck of a lot of praise for the way they've done that and helped Liverpool achieve success again that they weren't achieving before they came in. So so ownership is vital, investment is vital. But at the Bournemouth end of it, it's a lot of money for a little club in terms of catchment area, stadium and everything. And they're not going to be a little club in terms of achievement, that's for sure. And they are a joy to watch. I'm going to talk a little bit about their game against Crystal Palace in the upcoming letter. And we're going to talk about one of their players as well. So, no, we're English. We love the underdogs, don't we? We love it.
One thing while we're on about Bournemouth, they've sort of taken over a bit from Brighton. Sorry, Brighton, as my little team. If you, God, that sounds so patronising, but
I didn't mean to be patronising.
I said either. But what I love about one of the things I love about Bournemouth is they have a supporter every home game who brings the ball onto the pitch, and they give a reason for why that supporter's been chosen to bring the ball onto the pitch, and it's just a little act of unifying club and support in a way that other clubs don't manage nearly as well. And
I'll ring up Chelsea and ask if you can bring the ball out, Neil. I think that would go down very well with
I think I get shot first. That is, we need to talk about. Brought to a new low at the very end by Martin.
I think you're of an age now where they regard you as a sort of, a national treasure at Stamford Bridge, and you should be wheeled out. I do mean wheeled.
Yeah. Well, I want bulletproof clothing, please. We move on to 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay, and that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Young player, old player. Of course, I'm going for a few 2s this week. Martin, your young player.
Well, it is a Bournemouth player. Kroupi, Junior Kroupi. It's not Eli. He's French. It's spelt Eli, as we would say. And the junior is because his dad was a pro as well, with the same name, and played in the French Cup final for Lorient back in the early noughties. And
his dad
had a good career. His dad played in that. And Junior came to Bournemouth actually right at the end of the winter transfer window. I think it was actually in February. He was signed, and he was loaned straight back to Lorient, the club that his dad played for as well. And he's quick. He's already played for France under 21, so he's only 19. And he has made an impact. He obviously didn't play last season because he was back at Lorient, although he was technically a Bournemouth player. He scored a 90th minute equaliser at Leeds. He didn't play in the next game, and then he scored 2 in the first 38 minutes at Crystal Palace. So his first 3 Premier League goals have come in a spell of about 40 minutes on the pitch. And all the goals were taken with great ebullience as well. He's certainly one to keep an eye on, and he's in that mould of Semenyo, a bright, brisk attacker. And
but this was his full debut. It was the first start.
Yes, he started. Yeah, and it was he played in. I think he started in the League Cup game,
full Premier League
debut. Yeah. So he was. He was very much the fore. It looked as though Bournemouth were going to win that game. It twice looked as though that, but obviously there were Palace got it back to 2-2, and then Ryan Christie made it 3-2, and it was right. But we get so used to the score after 90 minutes is very rarely the score when the final whistle goes these days. And it finished 3-3, which is a great credit to both clubs, both of whom you would say are punchy above their traditional weight, not the weight at the moment because they're not fluking it. So he is my young player.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of him before this weekend.
No. Until I sent you a message saying he was going to be my young player.
Yeah, that was probably the first time I heard of him.
Yeah.
I've got 2. I watched an absolutely fantastic game on television last Friday night, which was Paris Saint-Germain 3, Strasbourg 3. I didn't realise, even though Strasbourg is the brother club, sister club, squashed club of Chelsea owners.
But not a feeder club. They've been pointing that out, haven't they? They'll settle for sister club, I believe, Strasbourg, yeah.
And they were third, only a point behind PSG going into the game. PSG have got as many top players out as Chelsea, Club World Cup finalists. They're bereft, PSG. They've hardly got anybody playing. But they got one player back, and he's my first player, and that was Désiré Doué. Now, we saw at the end of last season Désiré Doué shine as a right winger in a front 3 of him, Dembele, and Kalia on the left. He was the only one of that front 3 who was playing, but he didn't play in the front 3. He played on the left side of the midfield 3 in a 4-3-3. And he started off looking absolutely outstanding. He was born to it. So, I mean, we know this guy is gifted and is one of the best young players in the world. He set up the opening goal with a run into the penalty area and then a wonderful little pullback for Barcola to score. But Strasbourg equalised with a goal that you would have loved. A cross from deep, they played 3 at the back with their right wing back, managed of course by an Englishman, Liam Rossigna. A cross from the right wing back, and the big centre forward headed it in. Not the captain who's going to come to Chelsea at the end of the season. He wasn't fit. I don't know who this guy, centre forward was. I'd never heard of him, but it was a good header. But the right wing back who delivered the cross, 23 years old, was Guela Doué, brother of Désiré Doué. Désiré Doué, of course, is already now France international. Guela Doué is an Ivory Coast international.
Probably Guela, I would think.
Guela.
Yeah.
Guela. Strasbourg then took the lead when Désiré Doué, in his own penalty area, gave the ball away.
Not to his brother.
Not to his brother.
No.
And they scored. And then Strasbourg then took a 3-1 lead before Désiré Doué in the second half raced into the Strasbourg penalty area and won a penalty, which made it 2-3, and the game finished 3-3. He didn't finish the game, Désiré, because obviously he's not 100% fit. But at the end of the game, 3-3, the cameras went on the two of them talking.
Lovely.
And they had a family hug, and it was just lovely. And
Les deux Doué.
Yeah. So Désiré Doué and Guela Doué, never heard of Guela Doué before the game. I think Désiré Doué is rocketing into world
He's
class.
the real deal.
Yeah. But Guela, Doué, not to be left out of the family reckoning by any manner of means. Right wing back, Strasbourg. Have a look.
Nice story, Neil.
Old player.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's coming up 35. Danny Welbeck, who had never scored 10 goals. Bearing in mind, he played for England plenty of times as a forward. He'd never scored 10 goals in a Premier League season. And he played his career in the Premier League until last season. So maturing with age is a cliche, isn't it? Like fine wine and all that, which you know more about than I do. And now he's beaten Newcastle with 2 excellent finishes. A dink over Nick Pope, who's a formidable size coming out, but he just knew exactly what he was going to do and executed it perfectly. And then a snapshot when the ball broke to him on the edge there, couldn't have broken into a better position for him to hit, but you still got to do it. And it was late in the game when he looked as though Newcastle, having equalised, were going to go and win the game. They get the last goal of the game, but Danny got it. And he just, afterwards, I was talking to some of the Newcastle backroom staff and they said, what a finisher. You know, I go, well, he's got 81 Premier League goals now. He's been playing since he was 17 or 18. So he's more than a finisher. He offers much more to the team. He runs unselfishly or drop back. He did in the game, drop back into midfield, help the build up as well. I'm trying to work out how long it would take him, how old he would have to be to get 100 Premier League goals, because if anybody deserves to do that, it would be Danny.
But he's already, I think, only 5 goals fewer in his 30s than he got in his 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, quite.
It's like Chris Wood, really. We raved about Chris last season, and I'm raving about Danny now. Both terrific guys, both who support the team, both who give you much more than what you think when you put him down as he was the one supposedly main striker in the team against Newcastle. But he worked. He got taken off at the end because they had to defend the 2-1. He'd given them the 2-1 position, but he would have finished the game otherwise. And the other strikers have come and gone in his time at Brighton, but he's still there. He's the first name on the team sheet, and he took it all with due modesty and everything. It was, I know plenty of people even coming up 35 who'd been running around the pitch at the end going, I've won 3 Premier League points with my finishing ability. So he's so understated, really, off the field, but on it, a real statement again. So, Danny boy.
Yeah, and extraordinary because he's had to overcome a lot of injuries, a lot of knee injuries.
That's why he's not played the games maybe to get the 100 Premier League goals, but he's played for a long time and he looks fit as a fiddle now. So.
Yeah. I've got 2 old players.
You've got 2, always 2.
Steve Clarke,
if I had 2, we'd never finish the podcast.
Steve Clarke, who this last international break became the Scottish manager who's managed the most games and the equal most wins. He needs one more win to achieve that. He played 421 games for Chelsea and only won trophies in his last 2 seasons: FA Cup, League Cup, and European Cup Winners' Cup. Which was his last game, Cup Winners' Cup final. And he became a coach. He very quickly left the club a few months after that and became a coach at Newcastle under Ruud Gullit, then under Bobby Robson. He returned and became youth team coach and then coach under Jose Mourinho, assistant coach. Went to West Ham and he coached with Gianfranco Zola. He went to Liverpool and coached with Kenny Dalglish. And he said to me, the only reason Kenny chose me was I was the only person he could find who had a more miserable facade than he has. And I was signed to make him look happy. But he said to me early on when he was going into a managerial career, he said, the big players of today will find it very hard to go into management because they have enough money to live on for the rest of their lives and enough glory in their locker that they won't need any more when there's so much failure to be experienced when you go into management. He said the managers of the future will be people like me who have had a decent career, have made money, but not a lot of money. And if we want to keep up our standard of living, I'd better become a manager and make a business of it in order to survive. And that's exactly what he's done. And he's managed, I think, 3 league clubs in England, 1 in Scotland, got the Scotland job, and he's made an absolute wonderful achievement.
And the last win that he had to equal that record, he said was one of the worst days of his career.
Yeah. And look miserable about it.
He's so honest about it, and he was right, because I watched the game and I thought, it was they nearly threw it away actually at the end.
Yeah.
Well done. He's a
him.
proper football person,
and a similar. They crossed over as players. Gaspar, who of course played for Chelsea and Tottenham in England, Real Zaragoza in Spain, when they were a good team,
and Uruguay.
Yeah, and he of course won. I think he won the second tier and got promotion with Brighton, and then got sacked almost immediately. In a fallout with the club. It's not dissimilar. But this weekend, his team won the K-League, which is the League of the Korean Republic, South Korea, which is a mighty strong league. And they beat Suwon at the weekend in the game to win it. So he's got another trophy in his cabinet. And I'm surprised that a few Premier League clubs aren't looking at him, actually, because he's had a pretty successful managerial career and another medal in the locker. Well done, Gus. He managed Sunderland, of course, took them to the League Cup final.
Yeah.
I went to sit after a Sunderland-Chelsea game. I went and sat in the manager's office with him and his staff, but his wife was in there. And I knew this all through his time at Chelsea. I've never met another couple who look at each other, have a conversation, both talk at the same time, both at 100 miles an hour, and both actually hear everything that the other person is saying. They are the most unique couple I've ever met.
Well, it's worth listening to what Gus says, because when he talks football, he's very dynamic about it, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got strong opinions.
Yeah.
So well done to Gus.
Yeah. And my favourite quote of his was about his playing career. He said, "I had a world-class first touch, world-class. And do you know why? Because if I'd have needed a second touch, I was so slow, I wouldn't even have been a professional player." Old players. Who's your player?
Yeah, this is one that sort of snuck up on me, really. I didn't realise there was some interesting facts around it. Rafael Leão, the Portuguese, Milan-based Portuguese international, who started the game against Fiorentina the last weekend of Serie A. His first start of the season, a couple of sub appearances, had a bad calf injury, and would have played much more because he's been a regular player. Although he is a player who gets, I don't think he's maybe a coach's favourite player, because he's a bit inconsistent. But when he's good,
when he's good, he's world class.
Very good.
And when he's not good, he's utterly anonymous.
He is. Anyway, they needed to win the game to go top of Serie A, Milan, over Inter, which of course makes everything that much more special. And Fiorentina near the bottom of the table went in front, and Leão probably was likely to be taken off pretty early, really. Say around the hour mark. They obviously wanted to keep him on. They'd got a goal down, and he sent a skimming shot past David De Gea, who's in the Fiorentina goal these days, from at least 25 yards, and it was his first goal in the San Siro in a league game for almost 18 months.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, obviously some injuries have been part of that, but with the talent that he's got. And then, so 1-1 wouldn't have been enough, so they needed to win the game to go top, and they got a penalty. And in the dying minutes of the game, and Rafael Leão had never taken a Serie A penalty before, took it upon himself to take on the responsibility, planted it in the corner, so suddenly he's got 2 home goals for the first time for almost 18 months. And so they went top. there was a nice little bit afterwards, and I had to check this. He wanted to take his shirt off having scored the penalty, but the players, his teammates, jumped on him, and they should do this more often around the football world, really, and pull his shirt back down again. Now, I thought he must have been booked already, but I couldn't find any evidence that he had been. It was just that they didn't want him, there's still 5 minutes to go, and they want to go top of the league, and they want to keep him on. So it was a great comeback, and for me, that was something worthy of mentioning on the Joy of Football, because it was a very joyous occasion for the player himself and his teammates. I think Italian football generally, obviously the Florence fans, they didn't like it, but his kind of play is something that lights up a league.
Well, Milan, the year after Donnarumma left and went to PSG, they signed that summer. They signed Mike Maignan, who, as you know, I adore. And they won the league that year with Maignan, and Leão won Serie A Player of the Year.
When he's good, he's very good.
Yeah, and since then he's been linked with a move time after time after time. And the interesting thing is, maybe he's not had the consistency that he requires to play for one of the really big clubs, but he has enthusiastically signed new contracts, and he seems to love it there. He seems to love living in Milan and love the life there. So,
you wouldn't blame him for that. I think
it's a match
in this
made
room
in heaven.
Would say that.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that a pragmatic manager, Roberto Martinez, doesn't see him as absolutely key to the Portugal challenge. Very, very glad to have him as an option, but that. Managers love people you can think, I'm going to get 7 or 8 or 10 every week.
Yeah,
I mean, that kind of
generally
play.
He's
a game changer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And he changed this game. And a comeback, having been out for so long and short of goals for so long, must have been wherever he went in Milan, in lovely Milan, to celebrate after the game. He would have had a good time, I think.
Well, my player is somewhat of a comeback player. Is Emiliano Buendia of Aston Villa, who got the winner at Tottenham.
Emmy to his friends.
Emmy, yeah. I've never quite got my head around the fact that about 3 or 4 years ago, Norwich got promoted to the Premier League. Their best player by a million miles that season was Buendia, and they didn't bring him up. They sold him to Aston Villa that summer. Was it to do with finance? Was it really to do with finance? He's going into the Premier League. Surely you don't have those difficulties. I don't know. Maybe it was. But it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Norwich went down, and Buendia had an okay season. 2 years ago, in August, he ruptured his cruciate ligament, missed the whole season, and then came back last season, but really struggled. Now, I've had so much experience inside a football club of watching players come back from bad injuries, and they get into the position where they're fit again to play, and everyone thinks they're the same player, and they're not the same player, and it takes months, and sometimes it takes years to come back. And I don't think people appreciate just how often a player can labour for 2-3 years with the hangover of an injury that never quite allows the player to come back to 100% of what they used to be. Maybe that was the case with Buendia last season.
And maybe he'll never quite be that player that he was.
But the interesting thing is, in a World Cup year, when you're looking at people to come back from those kind of injuries, and will they play for their nation in the World Cup, just be careful what you wish for, because they might be fit to go out and turn out on a football pitch, but they might not be the same player, which doesn't mean they won't be the same player in 2 years' time, but they might not be the same player this summer. So they signed Morgan Rogers in the time that he's been out, which is a similar player.
Position. Yeah.
But he scored 3 goals in his last 4 games. He came on against Fulham and made it 3-1, got the goal that secured them the victory. He started in the Europa League on the left wing away to Feyenoord and got the opening goal. And now at Tottenham, he came on and he scored the winning goal. It was the best goal I've seen this season. not because of Buendia alone, but because of the extraordinary volley diagonal pass by one fullback, Matty Cash, the unbelievable acrobatic
Matty
control.
Cash was booed throughout the game, wasn't he, by the Tottenham fans?
Because
I was trying to work it out. There must be a reason why, but it's something that must have happened in a previous Tottenham Villa game.
Brilliantly brought down by Lucas Digne, and the other fullback, who was on the right of the penalty and was able to bring it down with his left foot and then hook it back to Buendia in one move. And then Buendia ghosting across the pitch and curling a shot around the defensive blanket and in at the far post. A technical finish of just
what would have been
genius.
A rival to that, Neil, and it didn't happen. But as the pass was made, I went, wow, was Mo Salah's ball for Cody Gakpo when he cut in on his right foot and hit the post. Yeah. And that was the original arrow fired through the heart of a defence. So past one player probably, but there was no space for it really, but he got it through.
Buendia's 28 now. Yeah. So he must have ruptured his ligament at 26. And he's not lost 1 year of his career, he's lost 2 years and spent 6 months coming back and fighting for fitness. But it looks as though it's coming back, and he looks the player that Aston Villa signed, and it's fabulous. And he could help them a lot this season. Right, that is three of the best. Thank you very much. We go on to Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
As always, thank you, Neil, for the build-up. Ange Postecoglou wasn't the only Australian involved in the Premier League during the afternoon that led to his departure from Nottingham Forest. A fellow countryman was at the heart of the thrilling fixture between Crystal Palace and Bournemouth. It was referee Jarred Gillett. His astute handling of the game played a major part in the ebb and flow of what developed into a Premier League classic. However, one moment stood out and deserves a special mention. 6 minutes into the second half, Palace's Ismaila Sarr, looking for a speedy breakaway, was brought down by Bournemouth's Argentine defender Marcos Senesi. Jarred Gillett produced a yellow card, despite claims from the Palace players and fans that it should have been red for stopping Sarr going through on goal. On VAR duty was Alex Chilovitz, who's been brought over from the USA as a long-time MLS expert for such duties by the PGMOL. Well, we live in a world of acronyms, of course. As I say, VAR, USA, MLS, and PGMOL. Well, this incident in refereeing parlance was a potential DOGSO, D-O-G-S-O, denying obvious goal-scoring opportunity. Believe it or not, that's what they call it. Well, it was suggested by Alex in the VAR hub at Stockley Park that Jarred should go to the screen. That's almost always the prelude to a change of mind and a change of decision. Bournemouth, and Senesi in particular, must have feared the worst, particularly as such reviews last season on their players Ilya Zabani and Evan Nielsen in separate matches had led to yellows being upgraded to red. Now, there are four main criteria for the DOGSO dismissal. 1. Was the attacking player within reason close enough to score? 2. Was the player moving towards goal? 3. Did the player have control of the ball? 4. Were there defenders who could reasonably intervene? Well, Sarr certainly had the ball under control, and with his pace, even though he was nearer the halfway line than the edge of the Bournemouth penalty area when the incident occurred, you could argue that he was close enough to score. There were defenders chasing back. Whether they would have been able to cover was worthy of a debate, but crucially, the Palace player was not moving directly towards the goal, veering in fact to his right. Jarred Gillett, to his great credit, saw the replays as he had seen the original decision. He stuck to his guns, rejecting the steer from Stockley Park, and to my mind sending an important message to other referees to trust first impressions and not succumb to the pressure and temptation of slow-motion reviews. Television commentators understand better than most that such messages can be misleading. We look at replays all the time. Later the same day, also in London, one of our most experienced referees, Anthony Taylor, was in action taking charge of Fulham against Arsenal. The same Anthony Taylor who gave a very revealing interview recently about the difficulties of the job, and it was good to see him speak out. And particularly he talked about an expectation of perfection in decision-making, which of course is totally unrealistic. But Anthony deserves a mention for his work at Craven Cottage, in particular another incident that led to a visit to the pitch side screen. I was listening to the game on the radio on my way back from Brighton against Newcastle, a highly competitive match, handled well, incidentally, by Craig Pawson. 1 yellow card shown, and in the 97th minute to the Magpies' Dan Burn for a gesture of frustration after failing to equalise against his old club. BBC Radio 5 Live were at Craven Cottage with one of their excellent commentators, Alistair Bruce Ball, who was so certain that a Fulham substitute, the Brazilian Kevin, had made a rash challenge on Bukayo Saka that he shouted penalty straight away. Anthony Taylor reacted just as quickly and pointed to the spot. Now, the radio commentary team have access to the television replays, and as soon as they came up on their monitors, Alistair, working alongside the Southampton icon Franny Benali, great guy Franny, spotted a marginal touch on the ball by the alleged offender. The video referee that evening was Stuart Atwell, and he suggested to Anthony Taylor that he should take a second look. It was a close call, because faint contact in these situations can be overlooked, but the "he played the ball first" mantra still reverberates around our game, certainly amongst older fans. Anthony saw it as such and quickly and correctly overturned his decision. In our culture of constantly questioning referees, I believe we should dish out much more praise when they are spot on. So our plaudits from the joy of football to Jarred and Anthony for being just that on that Saturday. Oh, and by the way, incidentally, it must have been a particularly challenging task for Anthony Taylor, who's a big fan of National League club Altrincham. Being a 5:30 kickoff at Fulham, he must have found out before the game that earlier in the afternoon, his favourites had lost 3-1 at home to Woking.
Woking! I've got to say that if I were handing out my referee of the season, last season, I would have given it to Jarred Gillett. I know that Taylor and Oliver are the kind of PGMOL favourites or most rated, but I thought Gillett made a big impression when he got his chance in the Premier League, and I've seen him have some iffy games, but I think he's done well as a referee.
Yeah, he had a big decision later in that game as well, of course, that made it 3-3 when he gave the penalty in favour of Mark Gay, who was being pulled to the ground.
I thought that was correct.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree with that. So he had a very, very good game. But I do think, even from Jarred's point of view, when you are going against the grain like that, even if you know you're right, you're still doing something that perhaps is looked upon from, well, yeah, I told you it was... So I remember Graham Scott did it. He was the first one. Not many have done it. It has been done before. Graham Scott did it in a Tottenham-Brighton game, and he stuck with his decision about allowing a goal when VAR said there was a foul in the build-up, and he allowed the goal. And I don't think he was... I think it was quite a debatable decision, but he went with his on-field judgment, which we lived with, didn't we, before? So now it's something that shouldn't be out of the question. And there have been decisions this season where like the one with the disallowed Fulham goal, Josh King in the game we were both at,
which was ludicrous.
When Rob Jones could have easily gone, well, that definitely wasn't a foul. I mean, I was right by it, and so that's the only reason you're telling me to look at the screen. Well, we'll forget it. The goal stands, So let's see whether it has some repercussions, but I think it's good for people like ourselves. I know we're not the only ones. I know the Sky pundits, my old mates at Sky, were going. He's got to stick with his decision before it was made, and was sort of jumping up in the air in compliment of the fact that he did stick to his guns. And let's hope we see a bit more of that, because of course the screen is there for a purpose, but it's not to really, change. If a referee's had a good view of an incident, he should stick by it.
It worked. Lovely. A couple of important things. Martin's letters from the Gantry slowly being put up on our Substack site, substack.com, which is also called The Joy of Football, and you can read them there. Also, my angry musings, which are original pieces. If you like The Joy of Football, you can, of course, subscribe. You can go on the Patreon in order to see other things. And I was about to move on to Voice of Passion, but we've gone on for long enough, and I'm going to save it for another week because you know what I'm like. It'll be over the top and it'll go on too long.
Wow, what a relief.
So
I'm speaking on behalf of the kind viewers and listeners. No, of course, we love it. And it's a very integral part of it because Neil has trenchant views and he's a very independent man. And sometimes, I'm perhaps a bit more an establishment figure. So I have to play the dead bat against it. But they're always fun to listen to when you're sitting here. I hope they are wherever you're listening to them as well. Yeah.
Inclusivity. Isolationism. No stoppage time either. Stoppage time from Martin and me.
Thanks for being with us.
So that's it for another week. I just, before we actually wrap up, I've just got to ask Martin, what was your reaction when you found out the Woking scored 3-1 at Altrincham?
I was surprised because the team had a very bad cup result where a game I was at, beaten 6-2, fellow National League, a very welcoming club, by the way. It was a great place to visit, but a terrible match from the Woking point of view to watch. So all credit to the player. They've worked hard.
Was that against Altrincham as well?
No, that was against Brackley. Brackley, yeah. And they're new to the National League. You can tell they're thrilled with the level that they've reached.
Where is that, Brackley?
It's sort of Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire. Yeah, it's quite a reasonable journey. A nice journey there, a nice place to visit, and a terrible game to watch, and a very long, painful journey back. But after that, to bounce back like that, the players must have worked very hard in the week. And Neil Ardley, the manager, deserves a lot of credit because he would say it was a catastrophe in the cup. But at Altrincham, it was the A game.
Nottingham Forest up and down in a day, and it was a good day.
Yeah, I was trying to spot you in the crowd. I was sitting at Brighton in their press room watching your game, which was the early kickoff, of course, wasn't it? But the first half was all Forest, so no wonder I didn't see you. You were probably keeping your head down.
No, all Forest, and they didn't have a shot on target. Oh, dear. Joy of Football, 3 points. The Joy of Football participants have all won this weekend.
All away from home. 4 clubs, 4 away wins.
Get the wine out, boys.